there's temperature, and there's the ingredients themselves. And those three form a triangle, and if you affect any one of those points, time, temperature, or ingredients, it affects the other 2 points. But knowing that can empower a baker to make choices consciously. So knowing that, okay, my oven is I'm baking at a much higher temperature than the textbook says, so what do I do about that? Well, you can adjust by adding more water, for instance, or time temperature, or I've got a flour from Italy. I can't get as much water into Italian flour. If I put 65% water into Italian flour, the dough is going to break down. It's just going to run off the table. So I have to adjust. So everything requires adjusting in the other 2 points. So that gives us sort of a little framework. The 12 stages of baking themselves, which we'll talk about throughout the night and identify them as we get to them, are as another structure. It's a framework. It's not a rule of baking. It's just a sort of a thought form for trying for us to be able to get our mind around the process of this transformational journey from wheat to eat. And then finally, we'll talk about what some of those transformations are, and then we talk about this idea, of the baker's mission. And then the last thing, the last definition we'll say is just the definition of baking itself. Because just understanding what we mean by baking can also help us in some of the decision making. And the textbook definition of baking is the application of heat to a product in an enclosed environment, the oven, for the purpose of driving off moisture. That's really what baking ultimately is. Now with bread baking, there are other things that are going on besides just moisture evaporating. There's proteins that are coagulating, there's sugars that are caramelizing, there's starches that are gelatinizing. All of these things are going on. These are the chemical transformations, very literal chemical transformations that are going on, that are changing dough into bread. But all of this is happening within the context of driving off moisture. So a dough that goes into the oven and weighing about 19 ounces will come out weighing 16 ounces or a pound. So if you want a 1 pound loaf, you can't go in with a 1 pound loaf because you're driving off at least 3 ounces of moisture while you're baking. So that's just real basic. Okay, so just so we can get going, I want you to taste some things. And there's a couple things you still have to bake and get going. So we've got some things that already came out of the oven. We're going to slice this after it cools. It's not quite ready, it just came out. But we do have this focaccia, which did come out earlier, and it's cool enough to start serving. So we'll serve this first. This is a fruited focaccia. It's great for breakfast, for any time. But I think of it as a breakfast or dessert focaccia because we've got the caramelized dough underneath and the whitish glaze on top. So the garnish has to accomplish 2 things. I guess we're not going to do it here. I guess we're going to do it there. Here. Just be careful carrying there. Do you have enough room to work there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now listen. Catherine, we're only serving the focaccia now. Do not cut the, I want you to finish glazing the babkas, but not cut them because they're still too warm. And what you saw was 2 styles of babka, and I'm going to show you how we made it. One was baked in a pan, one was baked freeform. 2 of them are filled with a walnut filling, 2 of them are filled with a chocolate filling. We're going to make that in a little bit. We've got a piece of dough. I'm going to show you how we did it, and later I'll show you how we made the actual dough. But I didn't want to start serving that yet because it's too warm. But this year we're going to start with this first. And then what we'll be serving, Catherine, we'll be serving the focaccia first. And then after a little bit, we can take these baguettes and French breads that we made. And we'll serve them second. I don't know if she's here yet. You're catching all that. Kathy, are you catching? Okay. Well, yeah, why don't you bring it back? I just wanted to show it to them. I didn't get a chance to talk about it yet. Everything's moving a little too fast. So I think this one turned out really spectacular. This is a walnut babka, walnut and pecan actually, baked in a loaf pan. And these are the same thing, but baked in smaller loaf pans, but with chocolate filling. And then you saw the big amorphous ones. It's the exact same shaping technique, but the pan gives it definition, and then there's more freeform. So let's just make this here. And then we'll come back, they'll glaze it, we'll serve that in a little bit. With this last piece of dough, and you can see that the babka dough, this is not crusty hard bread. This is rich dough. This is a whole other category of baking. These are the rich and enriched doughs. This one is a real rich dough. It's like brioche. There's a lot of egg yolks, a fair amount of butter. The dough itself has butter, it has sugar, it has milk, it has everything. And so it makes a very soft, tender, buttery dough, like brioche. We made a babka, which is basically means grandmother. It's a comfort bread. I rolled it up, filled it with things. You can make cinnamon buns from this. You can make little fruit-filled rolls. But another thing that it does really well is it makes crumb cake. And so what we have to make the crumbs for the crumb cake is some all-purpose flour, a little bit of cinnamon, maybe some nutmeg. You can use any cinnamon, and then it gives you a choice in the recipe for a second spice. It can be allspice or nutmeg or whatever you like. Small amount, just a little hint, and brown sugar. I'm going to pick this brown sugar up with my fingers because it's a little lumpy. And then we're going to pour some butter on there. I'm going to mix all this up. There's a touch of salt. And then what we're doing with the melted butter is it's kind of similar to a streusel. Except with streusel, you use hard, cold butter. You kind of break it up like pie dough. You use your fingertips or you use a food processor and you break it all up. But with this brown sugar is really lumpy. You can see that, it picks up a lot of humidity in the summer. Got to come back to something I was giving you the garnish thing. I never finished that one. Got to come back to that.
Salted or unsalted butter?
Preferably unsalted. If you use salted, then don't add salt to the recipe. But we bakers tend to use unsalted. In our gluten-free book, we use salted butter. You saw the French breads that were over here. I don't know if you got a chance to see. We had some baguettes with the tars. Can I just get one of those loaves back for a sec? We even did a boule that we raised in a bowl, and we have some more of that dough. We're gonna start shaping it in a minute. I just want to cut this. Yeah, I wanted to show you what this looks like. This is going to be the next bread you'll taste. It's plain, lean dough, kind of like French bread. Lean dough is the general term for doughs that don't have enrichments. And so French bread falls in the category of lean dough. So what I want to look for in these lean doughs are large, irregular holes. That's an indication of a good loaf. So to really get a decent view, we have to kind of cut a cross section. And these holes are okay. I wouldn't give these A+ holes in order to get them to you in time. I think we had to rush them into the oven maybe just a little too soon. But we got good structure. We've got holes that are irregular, not a lot of large holes. There's a few, you can see a few large holes, and I'd like to see more of those. So that's what we're shooting for. You can see it a little bit better with this one, some large holes. And we'd love to see more of those. And the reason that we like large irregular holes, okay, you can grab all this now. And anytime you want, you can start serving that with the cheese.
All right.
You want to talk about the first cheese?
Yeah, we are lucky tonight. We have some cheeses to give you with your bread.
A little crowded. These are some rustic breads. We were able to get 6 loaves. I also held back a little dough so I can show you how I got them to this shape. Thanks. It's a sticky dough, as opposed to the lean dough, which is tacky. So these are like different characteristics that we look for in the breads to define them. So a rustic dough will tend to be sticky to the touch, and that's why you see a lot of flour and stuff on it. Lean, regular, standard lean doughs and sandwich breads and things like that are tacky to the touch. In other words, they peel off your finger like a Post-it note. They don't stick. So if I were to just kind of pick these loaves up, they'll stick. And there's a lot of breads that can be made from a lean dough. In one of my books, we talk about the pan ancien, an ancient kind of style dough. It's a rustic dough. Ciabatta, rustic dough. Focaccia, rustic dough. Pizza dough, somewhere in between a rustic and it's really the best ones are a rustic dough. We tasted a pizza today at Raphael's place. You all know Raphael Picaro from Picar's, and Raphael made a pizza for us today at his place on the pan ancien dough, which is the rustic dough, a dough like this, and it was like a killer pizza dough. It's tricky to handle. Most pizzerias wouldn't play with that level of stickiness because it's too much to handle, but it gives you a dough unlike any other. So that's kind of a cool thing to know about. But what it's mostly used for here is